Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, a late stage boomer, and it's been a while since my last video because I was out of town for a week. I returned to my old stomping grounds, the Western New York region. I was born in Buffalo and grew up in Cheektowaga and lived there the first 33 years of my life before moving to the heart of Dixie. This was only the second time that I'd been back since leaving, the last time being 3 years ago, which was very much a hit and run visit that lasted only a couple of days. So this time I made sure that I'd have time to do some of the things I wanted to do in 2023, but didn't. Visit all of my old haunts, my old neighborhoods, the areas I used to hang out in, and visit Niagara Falls again. I also got to visit and stay with some of my old neighborhood friends and had a great time going out with them and reminiscing about the old days and friends who've since left this world. I had a great time and it was good to get away and see how things had changed over the last 30 years. One of the major events of my return to Buffalo was the 45th annual reunion of my high school class. I'd never gone to any of the others before because it was a lot harder to find people in the pre internet and pre social media days before X and Instagram, Snapchat, Reddit, TikTok, and Facebook. But this was said to be the last official reunion that would be organized by the class reunion committee until the 50th. So I decided to build the rest of my stay in town around that. But I have to say that I was apprehensive and a bit nervous about going. Truth be told, I was kind of happy that I hadn't been contacted about prior reunions and possibly wouldn't have even gone to them if invited. You see, I was bullied in high school, verbally, psychologically, occasionally physically, on a daily basis. I originally planned to go in depth about my early years and our moves to various parts of town and different school systems. I actually wrote it all out and got really into the weeds about it, like a good 10 minutes worth of me feeling sorry for myself. But when reading all the way through it, I came away with the feeling that I was just going to come off as maudlin and self serving, and it was going to distract too much from the points I'm actually trying to make here. I'll paint a tale in broad strokes and leave it at that. I had friends in the two previous schools that I went to. When we moved to what would be my final school district, I started in fifth grade and was a complete outsider. I was overweight, wore thick glasses. My father was a functioning alcoholic, but not a mean one. But I was a socially awkward kid, ugly, and my mother dressed me funny, literally. She had mental issues and her brain was time locked into 1957, and she made me wear clothes appropriate to that time period. Brill creamed hair parted on the side, a white button down shirt, a tie, dress pants hemmed too high with cuffs on the outside, white socks, and dress shoes. In 1973 suburbia, where the parents let their kids go to school in jeans and sneakers and Kiss t shirts. I don't think you need 10 paragraphs of exposition to see where this story is going. My mother eventually got sick with cancer and died about 3 months before my 16th birthday. My father and I were devastated, and I was sick and tired of 5 years of dealing with insults, humiliation, stuff stolen from my locker, and the occasional beatdown from the jocks. My father allowed me to quit school on my 16th birthday, but I went on to earn my GED a few years later. I then went into a largely slacker lifestyle, working low paying menial jobs and becoming an alcoholic and drug addict for the better part of 12 years. Then a woman came into my life who straightened me out and married me, and I moved 900 miles away. We were happily married for 26 years until she passed away nearly 4 years ago, and here I am today, a fledgling YouTuber. And it's here right up front that I need to make perfectly clear that I absolutely do not blame bullying for the direction of my life immediately following my dropping out. I'm solely responsible for the life decisions I made. Nobody forced me to take up cigarettes. I was the only one who poured beer and vodka and tequila down my throat. It was my choice to smoke weed, drop acid, take speed, and snort coke. So I don't want people to get the wrong idea about my sentiments here. And I'm not making this video as some form of personal therapy as a result of lingering trauma, nor is it meant as a hatchet piece. It's not an attempt to strike back at old tormentors. In fact, even though I remember who they were, I'm not going to give the names of anyone who bullied me or of anyone else I talked to for this piece. No good can come out of naming names this far down the line, and I have no desire to try to shame anyone. All of them now have families and offspring, and it's up to them to let their loved ones know anything about their pasts. I'm not a tattletale. What happened happened 45 to 50 years ago, and nothing will change that. And I'm not really sure that I would change it if I could. Changing the past would mean that all of the good things that eventually came my way later in life might never have done so. And I certainly don't advocate to children or young adults to drop out of school or do the other things that I mentioned I did. They were bad for me over time, and my body is now cashing the checks that I wrote against it when I was young. So don't follow my early path. Stay in school, get a formal education, lead a clean and sober life. You'll thank yourself for it when you reach 50 and above. You have my personal guarantee on that. My time in the Depew school system wasn't completely miserable. I did eventually have some friends and a bunch of people who weren't outright resentful of me. I had good teachers who cared and tried their absolute best to make sure that we as students came away with a useful education. And it's not like I never had problems at my other schools. There are always at least one or two kids in any grade at any school who think of themselves as an apex predator. I'd been called fatty and four eyes and weirdo many times before, but from day one at DePew, I encountered a degree of intimidation, harassment, dominance, and peer victimization that I had never experienced before. I was the proverbial deer in the headlights, and over my time there became resentful and distrustful of others. I was always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next shove, the next foot stuck out to trip me, the next hand knocking books out of my hand, and the next smack upside the head to knock my glasses off. I remember in seventh grade, I was on crutches for a few months, and more than once I got a crutch kicked out from under me to make me fall down, all just for the satisfaction of getting a laugh at a disabled kid. And while I utterly despised it at the time, the bare truth is that's life. Getting bullied or mocked or called names or having your sexual orientation questioned has happened since man could stand upright and speak. There are a few things that are universal constants: the speed of light, death and taxes, and humans behaving badly. Kids in general are stupid, especially between the ages of 10 to maybe 25. They operate mostly on base instinct and follow a herd mentality. Monkey see, monkey do. How many times did one of your parents ask you, if so and so jumped off a cliff, would you follow them? And how many of you said, or at least thought, oh, yeah? Kids, at least most of them, seek attention, affirmation, status, and cred. They want friends, the more the merrier, but only the cool ones, the ones who like what they like, think like they think, act like they act. There's comfort in conformability and uniformity. Jimmy likes this game, so if I like that game too, then that should make me cool in Jimmy's eyes. Sally likes this singer. I think Sally's cool, so if I like the same singer, that should make me cool too. Kids want to impress and think others want to be impressed. So if Bob picks on the kid with green hair, maybe if I pick on him too, Bob will want to hang out with me. Julie thinks Kathy's a bitch, so if I call Kathy a bitch too, then maybe me and Julie can be besties. That's how it always starts, and that's how it always works. It's better to be part of a group than to be alone. Well, maybe a more correct word is safer. A few days ago, a Facebook friend, one who attended the reunion, reposted a meme from someone else that hits things right on the nose. Quote, when someone doesn't like you, they team up with another someone who doesn't like you, and before you know it, there's a group of hating someones. Funny thing is, they don't even like each other. Unquote. Very true. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The lone bully is a very rare beast. The herd mentality. There's safety in numbers. If you try to bully someone one on one, there's always a chance that the person being bullied may be emboldened to fight back. That's far less likely when you've got others covering your back. Bullying is never about a fair fight or even odds. And as far as the group hating each other, they always talk about somebody else behind their back when that other person's not there. I mentioned Facebook because while it's not exactly where the young crowd is these days, it's where people my age tend to hang out. You know, the ones that used to be on AOL and MySpace. It's Facebook is where we go to die. I never had an account there until after my wife passed. I told people I went on there to stay in touch with her friends and family, but why I really joined was because they have free online dating. Yeah, I've been on the market for a while and I've tried all the different dating apps, and there's certainly a degree of bullying and intimidation that goes on in those places, but that's going to be its own future video. I mentioned Facebook because I was on there one day and out of the blue I get a message request from one of the guys who used to bully me incessantly in school. I accepted it and he asked if I went to Depew schools, and I told him I did. He asked me if I remembered him, and I said I did. He went on to tell me that he'd always wondered what happened to me. When I told him I quit, he seemed a bit surprised. He thought I'd moved or something. He just knew that I was there and then I wasn't. I told him about my life after leaving school, and he did the same. Then he told me that he remembered how he treated me in school and that he was embarrassed by it. It had hung heavy in his heart over the decades, and he asked if I could forgive him for the things he said and did. I told him that was all water under the bridge, and I had no ill will towards him for it. We were kids. We were different, incomplete, inexperienced adolescents who didn't know any better. He still said he felt bad, but I told him, don't worry about it, let it go. We've chatted a few times since then, and he was at the reunion. I shook his hand and we hugged and we talked and laughed and got along just fine. When I was first notified about the reunion, I was a bit apprehensive in going. It's not that I was worried about I was going to get bullied or anything like that. It was just that the vast majority of the attendees still lived in the Western New York area. They stay in contact and sometimes do things together as old friends usually do. My hesitation was that I was again going to be the outsider, and I was afraid that I was just going to stand in the corner holding a drink and feign looking interested. But that wasn't that way at all. Thank God we all had name tags, because there were actually more people there that made the special trip that also hadn't seen their classmates in years or decades. There was music and a photo booth and a memorial to our fallen. We laughed and joked and ate and drank and took pictures. I went up to people and people came up to me. One person came up to me and introduced himself, and I remembered him, and when he told me his name, and I remembered him, he was also a bully. And he also apologized for his past ways, saying, like my other Facebook friend, that his heart had been weighed down by his past treatment of me. I told him as well that as far as I was concerned, the past was the past and that he shouldn't worry about it either. He seemed to accept my sentiment, but said again that he was sorry. We also shook hands and hugged and got a picture made together. And since things always happen in threes, A bit later, another person apologized for harassing me, and that it had also stuck with him as well. And again, I said what was done then, and I'd still be happy to consider him a friend. And we also hugged and got photographed together. It was a good time. I have to confess that one of my motives for going to the reunion was to have fodder for this video. I wanted to see how or if some of these people had changed. I wanted to get some insights from them about their motivation behind their actions. What was their line of thinking? How did they justify what they did? Were there other external or internal factors in their personal lives at the time? Had they been bullied by their family or friends? Had they felt pressured into bullying by their peers? Peer pressure is often a powerful force in what makes a kid do what they otherwise might not be inclined to do. Very few people want to be an outsider, so in order to feel included in a particular group or circle, they'll do whatever someone they idolize or adore tells them to do, regardless of the morality of the action. You become fearful that you might be ostracized or become the target of their bullying yourself. So you do it, even if it's against your better judgment. In my time, it started off usually with simple things like calling the local bowling alley and asking the guy who answered the phone if he had two 16-pound balls, or calling a store that sold tobacco and asked if they had Prince Albert in a can. From there, it might have gotten a little bit more malicious, ringing a doorbell and running after you lit a paper bag full of dog poop on somebody's porch, toilet papering their house, soaping their windows. And then from there, it might have leveled up to stuff that was either borderline or outright illegal. Messing with someone's car, breaking into a tool or garden shed, breaking into a vacant house, spray painting someone's house or car, or it could be other, much more dangerous and potentially lethal things. It was called hazing then, and it still is. Making someone do something in order to prove their loyalty. It still goes on today. Peer pressure is even more powerful now than it was when I was young, thanks to social media. A friend shares a reel of someone doing something outlandish or dangerous and challenges you to do it. Sometimes it's relatively harmless, planking, the mannequin challenge, renegade challenge, running man challenge, ice bucket challenge. Or it could be something a little bit more dangerous or destructive or disruptive, like public pranking, interrogating a stranger, or the coordinated disruption of a business by doing bull runs or takeovers. And then you have the deadly ones, the ones that make national news because some poor gullible fool wanted in on a trend. Probably the more infamous of these were the Tide Pod Challenge, Subway Car Surfing Challenge, the Blackout Challenge, and the Benadryl Challenge, all of which have caused documented deaths. Even the seemingly innocuous Chubby Bunny Challenge has claimed at least two lives due to suffocation. Kids do things other kids did or told them to do if they wanted to be cool or if they wanted to have a TikTok reel that goes viral. With social media being ubiquitous, these viral challenges are the new way to get into a clique. A kid sees the same reels over and over, and their friends tell them they're lame or a pussy if they don't do it, regardless of whether or not the person who shared the video actually did it themselves or not. Getting back on track, when I asked these people why they bullied me, I got the same simple answers from each of them. I was a jerk, I was stupid, I had no excuse. Kind of anticlimactic, but there it is. And I fully accept those replies. It's really the only valid one. All of my bullies were guys, and I'm sure that everyone has heard about various studies that claim that the male brain doesn't reach maturity until age 25. but there are others that suggest that development can continue into the 30s. The teenage brain is under very rapid and complex development. It's a period where the process of logical and reasonable thought are fighting against the urges of impulsiveness and instant gratification. The brain's reward center is hyperactive and means that they are much more emotionally intense and exceptionally driven by social reward, which can come in the form of aggression and the desire to dominate. They have trouble thinking about things in the terms of long term and planning and risk versus reward. Add testosterone from puberty into the mix, and you've got a concoction of contradiction, rebellion, and adrenaline that's very difficult to control. Some can't, and they act out in distasteful, destructive, or in antisocial ways. And this can mean bullying. So far, I've talked exclusively about male bullying, but obviously, it's something that is not gender specific. I spoke with a number of woman friends, and they recounted how they were bullied by both males and females in their early years. While the methods may have varied in comparison to how boys bullied boys, the basic mechanics were still the same: intimidation, dominance, humiliation, degradation, and physical acts of violence. I don't think there is any among us, male or female, who hasn't seen a girl fight when they were in school. And by the way, I was quite surprised in my talks with others when I learned that even the more popular and seemingly well adjusted classmates and friends had their own experiences with being bullied or intimidated. Nearly every one of them had at least one personal nemesis who tried to make them miserable. I'm not talking about someone that they just didn't like or get along with. I'm talking about their own personal oppressor. I'm 63 years old, which by the standard of today's school going youth means that I fart dust. I can't even begin to imagine what it must be like for public school children these days. I would think that foremost on their minds must be the literal fear of whether or not they're going to live long enough to come home at the end of the day, something my generation never had to worry about. We didn't have metal detectors to go through. We weren't required to have clear book bags that needed to be inspected each morning. We didn't have sworn law enforcement officers assigned to our school in either a full or part time capacity. We didn't have teachers that brought weapons to class like there are now in at least 29 different US states. And as much as I'd rather not, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the prevalence of gun violence in school from students taking out aggression on fellow students and faculty, something that wasn't even remotely thought of in the 60s and 70s. I was surprised to learn that one of the earliest school shootings actually occurred in 1840 at the University of Virginia when a student shot and killed a law professor. And while there are other recorded events of campus gun violence in the 19th and early 20th centuries, it was very rare and most often was just a one on one confrontation, not a mass casualty event. While they did become more common as we entered the 1990s, it was the Columbine incident that brought the issue to the forefront. Many of the people in the US and around the world, including myself, watched in horror and sadness as the consequences of the carnage unfolded live on TV as students fled the building and the wounded and the dead were brought out. According to Wikipedia, between the year 2000 and 2022, there were more than 300 occurrences of school shootings in the United States. While the majority involved 3 deaths or less, the majority of mass casualty events happen at high schools and colleges, with notable exceptions being Sandy Hook Elementary in Florida and Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. Since 2020, depending on the definition used regarding school shootings, there are an average of between 30 to 60 or above incidences of injury or fatality on a yearly basis. but I've found other sources stating numbers much higher than that. According to the K through 12 school shooting database, which includes reports of shooting incidents due to gang violence, domestic violence, shooting at after school activities or sports, fights that escalate into shooting, and accidents. In 2023 alone, there were 352 reported incidents. 2024 had 336, and 2025 had 235. So far for the calendar year of 2026, there have been 102 reports as of my posting of this video, with the new school year set to start within weeks. Well, I've had trouble finding exact numbers for mass school shootings that are directly related to bullying. The conservative number that I've managed to come up with is 11 in the United States. But for all the attention that America receives for its school shootings, they're not exclusive to us. In fact, there are at least 28 other incidents of confirmed bully relating mass shootings from around the world. Canada, France, Germany, Sweden, India, Brazil, Russia, Argentina, and Chile are among the others. And in a couple of those cases, the killing act of violence was bombing as opposed to gunfire. Some of our most infamous incidents with the largest numbers of casualties have been motivated by either unclear reasons or contested motives. But there's no denying that children on the whole are under more stress and pressure than ever before. The Pew Research Center conducted a poll of school teachers, and the result was that it was their opinion that as many as 49% of their students suffered from anxiety and or depression. It's not hard to see why. A great many parents and psychiatric professionals point the finger directly at social media as the major culprit. And I think they're right on the target. Since the advent of the smartphone and the proliferation of social networks, kids have lived their whole lives virtually. Gen Y is widely considered to be the first true computer generation, but even as far back as the 70s and the 80s, there were many concerns being raised about the amount of time children were spending staring at a monitor, whether it was watching violence on TV or hanging around at the arcade playing games or at home with a Mac or a PC. And good Lord, let's not forget the satanic panic. As technology progressed and consumer electronics became more affordable, they became ubiquitous. They were everywhere. Home gaming consoles, Game Boys, laptops, and the dawn of public networking. Then came VR and AR, which, while still aren't as widespread or technologically advanced enough to be considered essential, they further took eyes and lives away from the real world. Forgotten or exploited in the rush to modernize was the physical and mental health of the youth who were born into these new technologies. Whereas in my day, a TV or an Atari could be considered a relatively safe babysitter, today the kids have iPhones and Androids. Instead of playgrounds and bikes and skateboards, they have Minecraft and Warcraft and other massively network games or platforms. We had ABC, CBS, NBC. Now there's Netflix, Hulu, and Max. If we wanted to organize something or start a rumor or make up lies about someone or something, we got together in school, we talked in the hallways, we passed notes in class, or we hung out at the corner and spread the word, or we called somebody on the phone. Now you pick up the screen of your choice, go to the social network of your choice, and throw shade. The competitiveness and impulsiveness and need for gratification have a new outlet in the form of cyberbullying and digital peer pressure, upward social comparison, fear of missing out, doom scrolling, trolling, influencers hitting themselves in the face with a hammer. Yeah, I'm going to try to find a way to work that idiotic craze into as many videos as I can until that boneheaded trend dies. All of these feed into a vicious circle of loneliness, depression, low self esteem, and isolation. But again, I've soapboxed and want to get back on topic and try to wind things up. I've said that I was bullied and that I've forgiven those that I've been in contact with that bullied me. What I haven't said is that years later, I myself was a bully to someone, not in a physical term, but definitely in a psychological term. And this was at a point in my age where I can't claim that my brain wasn't fully developed enough to know better. I both hung out at and worked on and off at a local video game arcade. There was a guy who was about 2 years older than me, and he was a regular there. He was awkward, nervous, jerky, had a couple of tics, and was easily frustrated. He'd worked with a couple of my neighborhood friends, and they told stories about how he was always picked on and was the butt of pranks at work. He wasn't a bad guy or anything, he was just different, odd, seemed to want to try too hard to fit in. We used to rag on him incessantly, just like we were 10 years old. We mockingly imitated him, joked about his mannerisms, and we weren't averse to taking advantage of him. One night, while at a small party where we were playing board games and drinking and smoking weed, he told us about how he'd been bullied by his older siblings growing up and had extended a family member who'd been abusive to him. I toned myself down a little bit after hearing that, but I still didn't completely stop messing with him. But now, on occasion, I would stand up for him in front of some of the others. He still kept hanging around with us no matter how much flack he got. Then, in the late part of 1992, I'd hit my personal rock bottom in life. I'd been estranged from my father. I had just quit a job that I had for 3 years and hated. I was still alcohol and drug dependent, and I was being evicted from where I was living. He was living at home with his parents and had recently moved into a new room in their basement. Out of desperation, I asked him if I could move into his old room temporarily. It was either that or live in the Chevrolet Motel. He went to bat for me and he talked his folks into letting me stay there while I got my life in order. And that was the turning point for me. While there, I went to school for management and got my first retail management job in 1994, a profession I would continue in until I retired on disability in 2008. He had a computer and a modem, and it was in 1995 that by using it, I met a woman online who lived in Alabama, and we fell in love. In April of 1996, I packed all of my belongings in my car and drove 900 miles to start a second life, one that I never thought I could have. We married later that year, and he was the best man at my wedding. My wife and I had a blessed life and were soulmates until her passing in 2022. I never would be where I am today without the kindness of him and his family. He easily could have told me to go pound sand up my ass for the way I treated him, and I honestly wouldn't have blamed him if he did. But he didn't. He showed grace, and for that I am eternally grateful. So that's why the subtitle of this video is The Grace of Forgiveness. I could go all Star Wars here and talk about hate leading to the dark side, and there's definitely truth in that. Some people thrive on hatred. Maybe they were born into it, had it ingrained into them since day one. Maybe it's what they've done all of their lives. Anger is their happy place. And I used to be filled with a lot of hate and anger myself for a very long time. And I passed some of that on to a few others unjustly. But what I've learned over the years is that it takes a whole lot more effort to hate than it does to love or tolerate or forgive. Time's arrow only goes forward, and while the past can be remembered, it can't be changed. For me, at least, there's not much point in holding a grudge, at least not for something like being bullied in the past. I hope that those I met with at the reunion find grace in the forgiveness that I offered. I bear them no ill will and hope that they lead long and happy and prosperous lives. And as for my bullying, I met with my best man when I was up there and offered my own apology and asked for my own forgiveness, which was granted. I couldn't have possibly asked for any better outcome to my trip. Friends, fun, sun, suds, reliving old memories, making new ones, and the unburdening of hearts and spirits all around. I thank you if you've stuck around this long. If you found this video helpful in any way, or if you're a parent, grandparent, or great grandparent who has or knows children of school age, please talk to them early about the facts of life. I'm not talking about the birds and the bees. I'm talking about the ups and the downs, the ebbs and the flows, the highs and the lows, the good and the bad. Don't shelter them too much or for too long. The more they know about and expect the ways of the world, the better adjusted they will be, and their ability to deal and cope with life will benefit them throughout the rest of their days. Maybe show them this video so they can see that no matter how dark it may seem, there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel eventually. That's all I've got to say for now. If you'd like to share your own stories about being bullied or being a bully, and you think it might be helpful to others, please share your thoughts or experiences in the comments section of this video, or please share any resources that you know that can help against bullying, or any experiences that you might have had yourself being bullied that you can give as guidance towards those who are currently going through it, and suggest ways of peaceful resolution. As always, if you want to keep me on the mic, please give the video a like. And if you dig the vibe, please subscribe. And if you don't want to be passed by, click on the bell to be notified. I thank you all again and hope to see you back here soon for another video. Please be kind to others and be kind to yourselves. And please offer the grace of forgiveness.